Ladies and gentlemen, one of the greatest battles in life is not the battle around you, it is the battle within you. Many people spend years trying to change toxic people, avoid toxic people, or fight toxic people, only to discover that the real key to freedom is not controlling others but mastering themselves. The truth is this: toxic people can only dominate the areas where we have not yet developed strength, purpose, and clarity. When you know who you are, why you are here, and what you are called to accomplish, distractions lose their power and negativity loses its influence. Today, I want to share a principle that can transform your relationships, protect your peace, and help you walk confidently in your purpose. Because when you do this one thing consistently, toxic people will no longer control your emotions, steal your energy, or determine your future. Many people struggle with toxic individuals because they have never fully discovered who they are. When a person lacks a strong sense of identity, they become vulnerable to the opinions, manipulation, and control of others. Toxic people often look for uncertainty, insecurity, and confusion because these conditions make it easier for them to influence someone's decisions and emotions. The moment you understand your identity, however, you become much harder to intimidate, deceive, or discourage. Your identity is not determined by what people say about you. It is not determined by criticism, rejection, failure, or even success. Identity comes from understanding your value, your purpose, your principles, and the unique contribution you were created to make. When you know who you are, you stop seeking constant approval from people who do not have your best interests at heart. You no longer depend on their praise to feel important, and you no longer allow their insults to define your worth. One of the greatest mistakes people make is allowing others to name them. Society may label you, friends may label you, family members may label you, colleagues may label you. Toxic individuals especially enjoy placing labels on people because labels can become prisons. If they can convince you that you are weak, incapable, insignificant, or unworthy, they gain influence over your thinking. The danger is not what they call you. The danger is when you begin to believe what they call you. A person who knows their identity cannot easily be manipulated. They understand their values and refuse to compromise them for acceptance. They understand their goals and refuse to abandon them because of criticism. They understand their worth and refuse to settle for relationships that constantly diminish them. This inner confidence creates a protective barrier against toxic behavior. Many toxic relationships survive because one person is searching for validation. They desperately want to be appreciated, accepted, or recognized. Toxic people often exploit this desire by offering approval one moment and withdrawing it the next. This creates an unhealthy cycle where the victim constantly seeks permission to feel valuable. But when you truly know your identity, your value no longer depends on another person's mood, opinion, or approval. You become emotionally free. Knowing your identity also helps you recognize what belongs to you and what belongs to others. Not every criticism deserves your attention. Not every accusation deserves a response. Not every conflict deserves your energy. When people project their insecurities, frustrations, and negativity onto you, a strong sense of identity allows you to separate their issues from your own reality. Instead of carrying burdens that do not belong to you, you remain focused on who you are and what you stand for. Consider how many people spend years trying to prove themselves to individuals who have already decided not to appreciate them. They work harder, explain more, and sacrifice their peace in an effort to gain acceptance. Yet acceptance that must be earned through self-betrayal is never worth having. Identity teaches you that your value is inherent. It is not something people give you, and therefore it is not something they can take away from you. When your identity is clear, your decisions become clearer. You become less likely to tolerate disrespect because you understand your worth. You become less likely to engage in unnecessary arguments because you understand your purpose. You become less likely to follow negative influences because you understand your direction. Identity provides a framework through which every relationship and opportunity can be evaluated. Toxic people often create confusion because confusion weakens confidence. They may send mixed messages, manipulate facts, or constantly shift expectations. Their goal is often to keep others uncertain and dependent. But a person with a strong identity remains stable even in unstable environments. They are anchored by principles rather than emotions. They are guided by convictions rather than pressure. The strongest defense against toxic people is not aggression, revenge, or endless confrontation. It is clarity. Clarity about who you are, what you believe, what you deserve, and where you are going. When these things become clear, toxic individuals lose much of their power. Their words carry less weight. Their manipulation becomes easier to recognize. Their attempts to control you become less effective. People who know their identity walk differently through life. They do not need to announce their value because they already understand it. They do not chase every opportunity to prove themselves because they are secure in who they are. They do not allow toxic voices to become the loudest voices in their minds because they have already settled the question of their worth. Once you truly know your identity, you stop living at the mercy of other people's opinions and begin living from the confidence of your own purpose and value. One of the most important skills a person can develop is the ability to set clear boundaries. Many people think boundaries are about controlling others, but boundaries are actually about managing yourself. They define what you will accept, what you will not tolerate, and how you expect to be treated. Without boundaries, even the kindest and most capable people can find themselves exhausted, frustrated, and trapped in unhealthy relationships. Toxic people often thrive where boundaries are weak because they naturally push limits to see how much access, control, and influence they can gain. A boundary is a declaration of self-respect. It communicates that your time, energy, emotions, and peace have value. When you establish boundaries, you are not being selfish, you are being responsible. Just as a nation has borders that define its territory, every individual needs personal boundaries that protect their emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. Without them, people can enter areas of your life where they do not belong and create unnecessary confusion, stress, and conflict. Many individuals struggle with boundaries because they fear rejection. They worry that saying no will make others angry or disappointed. As a result, they constantly say yes when they want to say no. They agree to things they do not want to do, tolerate behavior they know is wrong, and sacrifice their own well-being to keep others comfortable. Unfortunately, toxic people often interpret the absence of boundaries as permission. The more you tolerate, the more they assume they can continue. One of the reasons boundaries are difficult to establish is that many people confuse kindness with compliance. Being kind does not mean allowing others to disrespect you. Being compassionate does not mean accepting manipulation. Being loving does not mean enduring endless mistreatment. True kindness includes respect for yourself as well as respect for others. When self-respect is absent, kindness becomes vulnerability to exploitation. Toxic individuals often test boundaries gradually. They rarely begin with extreme behavior. Instead, they start with small violations. They may ignore your preferences, dismiss your feelings, waste your time, or pressure you into decisions. If these actions go unchallenged, they often become more frequent and more severe. This is why boundaries must be clear and consistent. What you allow repeatedly becomes the standard that others expect. A clear boundary does not require anger. It does not require a long explanation or dramatic confrontation. Often, the most effective boundaries are simple and direct. You calmly communicate what is acceptable and what is not. You make your expectations known and remain consistent in enforcing them. The power of a boundary comes not from the words you speak, but from your willingness to uphold them. Many people make the mistake of setting boundaries verbally while failing to support them with action. They repeatedly tell others to stop certain behaviors, yet nothing changes because there are no consequences for crossing the line. Toxic people quickly learn when boundaries are merely suggestions. Real boundaries are supported by decisions. If someone continually disrespects your limits, you may need to reduce access, create distance, or reconsider the role they play in your life. Boundaries also protect your emotional energy. Not every problem belongs to you. Not every crisis requires your involvement. Some people constantly bring drama, negativity, and conflict into the lives of others. If you absorb every complaint, every argument, and every emotional burden, you will eventually become overwhelmed. Boundaries help you recognize where your responsibility ends and where another person's responsibility begins. Another important aspect of boundaries is protecting your time. Time is one of the most valuable resources you possess because it cannot be replaced. Toxic people often consume enormous amounts of time through unnecessary conflict, endless demands, and constant distractions. When you establish boundaries around your schedule and priorities, you prevent others from controlling your life. You become intentional about where your attention goes and who receives access to your energy. Healthy boundaries also reveal the true nature of relationships. Genuine friends, supportive colleagues, and mature individuals may not always agree with your boundaries, but they will respect them. Toxic people, however, often react negatively when boundaries are introduced. They may become angry, manipulative, or critical because boundaries limit their ability to control the situation. Their reaction often exposes motives that were previously hidden. Many people feel guilty when they first begin setting boundaries because they are accustomed to pleasing everyone around them. However, Guilt is not always an indication that something is wrong. Sometimes guilt simply means you are doing something unfamiliar. Learning to protect your peace may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if others benefited from your lack of boundaries. Yet growth often requires temporary discomfort. When boundaries become part of your life, relationships become healthier and more balanced. You communicate more honestly. You experience less resentment because you are no longer agreeing to things that violate your values. You gain greater confidence because you know your needs matter. Most importantly, toxic people lose much of their influence because they can no longer operate without limits. People who respect themselves understand that access to their life is a privilege, not an entitlement. They recognize that protecting their peace is not selfish but necessary. They refuse to allow fear, guilt, or pressure to dictate their decisions. Through clear and consistent boundaries, they create an environment where respect is expected, manipulation is resisted, and toxic behavior has little room to grow. One of the greatest sources of power in life is the ability to control your reactions. Most people spend a tremendous amount of time trying to control circumstances, events, and other people, yet they often neglect the one thing that is fully within their influence, their own response. Toxic people understand that if they can control your emotions, they can often control your behavior. This is why they provoke, criticize, insult, manipulate, and create conflict. Their goal is not always to win an argument. Often their goal is to gain control over your emotional state. Many individuals unknowingly surrender this control. They allow every negative comment to affect their mood. They allow every criticism to determine their confidence. They allow every act of disrespect to consume their thoughts for days. As a result, toxic people occupy space in their minds long after the interaction has ended. The person who triggered the reaction may have moved on, but the emotional damage continues because the reaction remains alive within the victim. A reaction is powerful because it determines the direction of your thoughts, decisions, and actions. When emotions take control, judgment often becomes clouded. People say things they later regret. They make impulsive decisions. They engage in unnecessary conflicts. They waste valuable time defending themselves against accusations that never deserved a response. Toxic individuals frequently rely on this pattern because emotional reactions often work in their favor. Learning to control your reactions does not mean suppressing your feelings or pretending that hurtful behavior does not exist. It means recognizing emotions without allowing them to become your master. There is a significant difference between feeling anger and being controlled by anger. There is a difference between experiencing disappointment and allowing disappointment to dictate your choices. Emotional maturity is the ability to feel deeply while still thinking clearly. One reason toxic people are successful at provoking reactions is that they understand emotional triggers. They pay attention to insecurities, fears, frustrations, and unresolved issues. Once they identify these areas, they use them as tools. A careless comment, a sarcastic remark, or a subtle insult can produce a strong emotional response. The problem is not simply the comment itself. The problem is when the target allows that comment to determine their behavior. People who master their reactions understand that not every situation requires a response. In fact, some of the strongest responses are silence, patience, and self-control. There are moments when explaining yourself only creates more confusion. There are situations where arguing only fuels the conflict. There are individuals who are not seeking understanding but seeking a reaction. When you refuse to provide the reaction they expect, you often remove their power. Many conflicts continue because both sides become emotionally involved. One person says something offensive and the other immediately responds. The first person reacts again and the cycle continues. Hours, days, or even years can be wasted in battles that never should have begun. A person who controls their reactions can interrupt this cycle. They understand that not every invitation to conflict deserves acceptance. Another important aspect of controlling your reactions is protecting your peace of mind. Toxic people often create emotional storms, but you do not have to live inside every storm that appears. Just because someone is angry does not mean you must become angry. Just because someone is negative does not mean you must become negative. Just because someone is bitter does not mean you must become bitter. You always have a choice regarding how you respond. Reaction control also strengthens confidence. When you constantly react to every opinion, criticism, and disagreement, your emotional state becomes dependent on external factors. Your peace rises and falls based on the behavior of others. However, when you learn self-control, your stability comes from within. You become less vulnerable to manipulation because your emotions are no longer available for anyone to control. Patience plays a critical role in this process. Immediate reactions are often emotional. while wise responses usually require reflection. Taking time before speaking, deciding, or responding can prevent many unnecessary problems. A brief pause can save relationships, protect opportunities, and preserve your reputation. The ability to think before reacting is one of the clearest signs of emotional strength. Toxic individuals often become frustrated when they cannot provoke the reaction they expected. They may increase their efforts, trying different tactics to gain emotional access. They may criticize more aggressively, spread negativity, or attempt to create drama. Yet when they consistently encounter calmness, confidence, and self-control, their influence begins to diminish. The strategies that once worked lose their effectiveness. Controlling your reactions also allows you to remain focused on your goals. Every emotional distraction consumes time and energy that could be invested elsewhere. Many people delay their progress because they spend too much attention on individuals who contribute nothing to their growth. They become consumed by proving themselves, defending themselves, or fighting battles that have no meaningful reward. Self-control helps redirect energy toward purpose rather than conflict. The strongest people are not always the loudest, the most aggressive, or the most confrontational. Often the strongest people are those who possess the discipline to remain composed when others lose control. They understand that their peace is valuable. They recognize that emotional reactions can be costly. They refuse to hand over authority over their thoughts and feelings to individuals who have not earned that privilege. By mastering their reactions, they protect their dignity, preserve their focus, and ensure that toxic people no longer have the ability to dictate the direction of their lives. The environment you choose has a tremendous influence on the quality of your life. Many people underestimate the power of their surroundings and wonder why they continue to feel drained, discouraged, and unmotivated. The truth is that no one thrives for long in an unhealthy environment. Just as a seed requires the right soil to grow, people require environments that support their growth, peace, and purpose. Toxic people understand this principle, whether consciously or unconsciously, and often seek to shape the environment around them through negativity, criticism, conflict, and control. Protecting your environment means becoming intentional about what you allow into your life. This includes the people you spend time with, the conversations you participate in, the information you consume, and the atmosphere you create around yourself. Many individuals focus on changing others while neglecting to protect the environment that influences them every day. Yet lasting change often begins with changing what surrounds you. One of the most important realities to understand is that environments are contagious. Attitudes spread, habits spread, beliefs spread, mindset spread. If you spend enough time around negative people, their negativity will eventually begin to affect your thinking. If you constantly hear criticism, complaints, and pessimism, those patterns can slowly become part of your own perspective. This process is often gradual and subtle, making it difficult to notice until significant damage has already occurred. Toxic individuals frequently create environments where fear replaces confidence and drama replaces peace. Every conversation becomes a complaint. Every opportunity becomes a problem. Every success becomes a source of jealousy. Every disagreement becomes a battle. Living in such an environment can be emotionally exhausting because it requires constant energy simply to maintain your own stability. Protecting your environment means recognizing these influences before they become deeply rooted. Many people remain in toxic environments because they underestimate their impact. They convince themselves that they are strong enough to handle constant negativity. They believe they can ignore unhealthy influences indefinitely. While resilience is important, no one is immune to the effects of their surroundings. Even the strongest individuals can experience discouragement when exposed to toxic conditions for extended periods of time. Wisdom is not merely enduring a harmful environment. Wisdom is knowing when to change it. Protecting your environment often begins with evaluating the people closest to you. This does not mean judging others harshly or expecting perfection. Every person has weaknesses and struggles. The question is whether the people around you consistently contribute to your growth or consistently undermine it. Do they encourage your goals or discourage them? Do they inspire progress or create distractions? Do they bring peace or constantly create turmoil? The answers to these questions reveal much about the environment you are living in. Another important aspect of protecting your environment involves guarding your mind. Modern life provides unlimited access to information, opinions, and content. Not everything that enters your mind deserves to remain there. Toxic influences are not limited to face-to-face relationships. They can come through social media, entertainment, news, and other forms of communication. Constant exposure to negativity can affect your emotions, beliefs, and outlook on life. Protecting your environment means becoming selective about what you consume mentally and emotionally. Your physical environment also matters. Disorder, chaos, and constant distraction can increase stress and reduce productivity. While perfection is not necessary, creating spaces that promote focus, peace, and clarity can significantly improve your well-being. The condition of your surroundings often affects the condition of your thoughts. A healthy environment supports healthy thinking. Many toxic people seek unrestricted access to your life because access increases influence. The more time they spend around you, the more opportunities they have to shape your emotions and decisions. This is why protecting your environment sometimes requires creating distance. Distance is not always a sign of hostility, sometimes it is an act of wisdom. Limiting exposure to harmful influences can be necessary for maintaining emotional and mental health. It is also important to understand that protecting your environment does not mean isolating yourself from everyone who disagrees with you. Growth often requires constructive feedback and diverse perspectives. The difference lies in the intention behind the interaction. Healthy people challenge you to grow. Toxic people often seek to control, discourage, or diminish you. One strengthens your future while the other drains your potential. A protected environment becomes a place where purpose can flourish. When negativity is reduced, focus increases. When distractions are minimized, productivity improves. Healthy relationships are prioritized. Emotional strength grows. Instead of constantly recovering from unnecessary conflict, you can invest your energy in meaningful goals and personal development. Many successful people are highly selective about their environment because they understand its influence. They recognize that every person, conversation, and influence either contributes to their growth or detracts from it. They do not leave their environment to chance. They intentionally create conditions that support the life they want to build. Protecting your environment is ultimately an act of stewardship. It is the recognition that your peace, focus, energy, and purpose are valuable resources that deserve protection. You cannot always control who enters your path, but you can control who receives ongoing access to your life. You cannot eliminate every negative influence, but you can reduce their impact by choosing your surroundings wisely. When you intentionally protect your environment, toxic people lose many of the opportunities they once had to affect your thoughts, emotions, and direction, allowing you to grow in a space that supports your highest potential. One of the most effective ways to prevent toxic people from controlling your life is to focus on your purpose. People who lack direction often become vulnerable to distractions, unnecessary conflicts, and the influence of others. When there is no clear destination, every opinion seems important, every criticism feels personal, and every drama demands attention. However, when you have a strong sense of purpose, your priorities become clear. You begin to understand what deserves your energy and what does not. Purpose gives meaning to your life beyond temporary emotions and circumstances. It provides a reason to wake up each day with intention. It helps you see beyond current challenges and remain committed to a larger vision. Toxic people often succeed because they convince others to become consumed by issues that have little lasting value. They create distractions that pull attention away from meaningful goals. A person who is focused on purpose recognizes these distractions and refuses to allow them to become the center of their life. Many individuals spend years fighting battles that have no connection to their future. They argue with people who are determined not to understand them. They seek approval from people who have already decided not to appreciate them. They invest enormous amounts of emotional energy into proving themselves to individuals whose opinion should carry very little weight. As a result, valuable time is lost. Purpose helps you recognize that your life is too important to be consumed by unnecessary conflict. One of the characteristics of purposeful people is that they understand the value of time. They realize that every hour spent on drama is an hour taken away from growth. Every moment spent dwelling on negativity is a moment that could have been invested in progress. Toxic individuals often create situations that consume attention because attention is a form of power. The more attention they receive, the more influence they gain. Purpose helps you redirect your focus toward goals that actually matter. People without purpose are often easily distracted because they lack a clear standard for decision making. They move from one issue to another, reacting to whatever demands their attention at the moment. In contrast, people with purpose evaluate opportunities, relationships, and challenges through the lens of their mission. They ask themselves whether something contributes to their growth or merely distracts them from it. This mindset creates discipline and clarity. Purpose also strengthens resilience. Toxic people frequently attempt to discourage others through criticism, negativity, and doubt. Their words can be powerful when someone lacks confidence in their direction. However, a person who understands their purpose becomes less dependent on external validation. They know where they are going and why they are going there. Because of this, criticism loses much of its power. While feedback may still be considered, it no longer determines their identity or direction. Many people become trapped in toxic relationships because they make those relationships the center of their lives. Their happiness, confidence, and emotional stability become dependent on another person's behavior. When the relationship becomes unhealthy, their entire world begins to suffer. Purpose creates a healthier balance. It reminds you that your life is larger than any single relationship. It helps you maintain perspective and avoid losing yourself in someone else's dysfunction. Another benefit of focusing on purpose is that it naturally filters relationships. People who support your growth often become valuable allies. Those who constantly oppose your progress become easier to recognize. Purpose reveals who genuinely wants to see you succeed and who feels threatened by your advancement. Toxic individuals often become uncomfortable when they realize they are no longer the center of your attention. As your focus shifts toward meaningful goals, their ability to influence you begins to diminish. Purpose also helps you manage setbacks more effectively. Toxic people sometimes use failures and mistakes as opportunities to discourage others. They may remind you of your weaknesses, exaggerate your errors, or predict your failure. Without purpose, such attacks can be devastating. With purpose, however, setbacks become part of the journey rather than reasons to quit. You understand that temporary difficulties do not define your future. They are simply obstacles that must be overcome along the way. A focused life leaves less room for unnecessary drama. This does not mean challenges disappear. Every meaningful goal involves obstacles and opposition. The difference is that purposeful people choose their battles carefully. They do not waste energy fighting every critic or responding to every negative comment. They understand that success often requires concentration. The more focused they become, the less influence toxic distractions have over their decisions. Purpose also creates emotional stability. When your life is driven by a meaningful mission, your sense of worth becomes connected to something larger than momentary approval. You stop measuring your value by the opinions of others. You stop allowing temporary conflicts to determine your emotional state. Instead, you gain confidence from knowing that your life has direction and significance. Many of history's most impactful individuals faced criticism, rejection, and opposition. What allowed them to continue was not the absence of toxic people, but the presence of purpose. Their mission was greater than the negativity surrounding them. They understood that focusing on their calling was more productive than focusing on their critics. The reality is that toxic people cannot easily derail a person who is deeply committed to their purpose. They may create noise, but they cannot control the destination. They may offer criticism, but they cannot define the mission. They may attempt to distract, but they cannot succeed if attention remains fixed on what truly matters. Purpose provides direction, discipline, and perspective. It keeps your eyes on the future rather than on the distractions around you, allowing you to invest your energy where it produces growth, fulfillment, and lasting impact. One of the most important decisions you can make in life is choosing growth over drama. This choice may seem simple, but it has the power to transform your future, protect your peace, and reduce the influence toxic people have over your life. Every day, people are presented with opportunities to engage in conflict, defend themselves against every criticism, respond to every insult, and participate in every controversy. Yet those who achieve lasting success understand that growth and drama rarely occupy the same space. One moves you forward while the other keeps you stuck. Toxic people often thrive on drama because drama gives them attention, influence, and control. They create unnecessary conflicts, spread negativity, exaggerate problems, and draw others into emotional battles. Their focus is rarely on solutions. Instead, their energy is invested in maintaining the conflict itself. Unfortunately, many people become trapped in these situations because they mistake activity for progress. They spend enormous amounts of time reacting, arguing, and defending themselves while their personal growth remains neglected. Growth requires focus. It demands that you invest your time and energy into becoming a better version of yourself. It involves learning, improving, developing skills, strengthening character, and pursuing meaningful goals. Drama, on the other hand, consumes energy without producing value. It distracts attention from what matters and redirects it toward temporary emotional conflicts. Every hour spent in unnecessary drama is an hour that could have been used for personal development. Many people fail to realize how expensive drama can be. It costs peace of mind, it costs emotional energy, it costs productivity. It damages relationships and often delays progress. A single conflict can dominate a person's thoughts for days or even weeks. During that time, opportunities are missed, goals are neglected, and momentum is lost. Toxic individuals understand this, which is why they often seek to keep others emotionally occupied. Choosing growth means refusing to make every issue your responsibility. Not every argument requires your participation. Not every accusation deserves a response. Not every misunderstanding must become a prolonged debate. Wisdom involves recognizing which situations contribute to your development and which situations simply drain your resources. Mature people learn that silence can be more powerful than retaliation, and that walking away can sometimes be more productive than winning an argument. One of the reasons drama is so appealing is that it creates a temporary sense of importance. Being involved in conflict can make people feel significant, informed, or influential. However, this sense of importance is often an illusion. While attention is focused on the drama, meaningful progress is neglected. Growth may be slower and less exciting than conflict, but it produces lasting results. Drama creates noise, growth creates transformation. Toxic people often become frustrated when they encounter individuals who prioritize growth. They may attempt to provoke reactions, create distractions, or introduce unnecessary conflict. Their goal is often to pull others into the same cycle of negativity that consumes them. However, people who are committed to growth understand the value of their energy. They refuse to invest it in situations that offer no return. Instead of reacting emotionally, they remain focused on learning, improving, and moving forward. Growth also requires humility. It involves acknowledging weaknesses and actively working to improve them. Toxic people often focus on blaming others for every problem, but growth-oriented individuals focus on personal responsibility. They ask what they can learn from a situation rather than who they can blame. This mindset creates resilience because it places attention on areas that can actually be changed. Another advantage of choosing growth over drama is that it shifts your perspective. Instead of viewing every challenge as a personal attack, you begin to see obstacles as opportunities for development. Criticism becomes feedback. Failure becomes experience. Difficulty becomes training. This does not mean toxic behavior should be tolerated, but it means that even negative situations can be used as opportunities to become stronger, wiser, and more disciplined. People who prioritize growth often notice a significant change in their relationships. They become more selective about who receives access to their time and energy. They seek conversations that inspire improvement rather than conflict. They gravitate toward people who encourage progress rather than drama. As a result, their environment becomes healthier and more supportive of their goals. Growth also produces confidence. Unlike confidence based on praise or external validation, this confidence comes from continuous improvement. Every lesson learned, every skill developed, and every challenge overcome strengthens self-belief. Toxic people often lose influence over individuals who possess this type of confidence because their words no longer determine how those individuals see themselves. There will always be opportunities to engage in drama. There will always be people who seek attention through conflict and negativity. The question is whether you will allow those distractions to become the focus of your life. Every day presents a choice. You can invest your energy in proving people wrong, or you can invest your energy in becoming better. You can spend your time defending yourself against every critic, or you can spend your time building a future that speaks for itself. The most successful and fulfilled people are not necessarily those who face the least drama. Often, they are the ones who consistently chose growth when drama was available. They understood that their potential was too valuable to waste on endless conflict. They refused to let toxic individuals dictate the direction of their lives. By focusing on improvement, learning, discipline, and purpose, they continued moving forward while others remained trapped in cycles of negativity. Over time, their growth became the strongest response to every distraction, every criticism, and every attempt to pull them away from the path they were determined to follow.